The stars looked peaceful from the observation deck of the cargo ship. Captain Minji stood there, watching the distant glow of the barrier that marked the edge of human space. She had been flying this route for 20 years, and the barrier had always been there. A wall of energy that stretched across dozens of star systems. Nobody knew what was behind it. Nobody knew why humans had built it 300 years ago. Minji did not care much about mysteries. She cared about delivering cargo on time and getting paid. Today's delivery was simple: food supplies and equipment to Outpost Gamma 7, a research station near the barrier. The scientists there spent their days studying the wall of energy, trying to understand it. Minji thought it was a waste of time. Some things were better left alone. The ship docked at the outpost without problems. Minji watched her crew unload the cargo while she checked her payment. Everything was normal until Dr. Tae-hoon came running across the landing bay. He was young for a scientist, maybe 30 years old, and he always seemed too excited about everything. "Captain Minji, you have to see this," Tae-hoon shouted, waving his arms. "We found something. Something important," Minji sighed. Scientists always thought everything was important, but Tae-hoon looked different today. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wide. She followed him into the research lab. On a metal table lay a small device. It looked old and damaged, covered in burn marks. Tae-hoon pointed at it like it was made of gold. "It came through the barrier," Tae-hoon said. 3 days ago. We picked it up drifting in space. It's a human warning beacon." Minji looked at the device more carefully. Warning beacon? Humans had been gone for 3 centuries. Why would a warning beacon appear now? "What does it say?" she asked. Tae-hoon pressed a button. The device made a crackling sound, then a voice spoke. It was hard to hear, broken by static, but the words were clear enough. "Do not enter. Do not investigate. For your own survival, stay away." The voice repeated the message 3 times, then stopped. Minji felt cold. There was something in that voice. Fear. Real fear. "How old is this?" Minji asked. "That's the strange part," Tae-hoon said. "The date stamp says it was sent 50 years after humans disappeared. They were still alive in there. They were still trying to warn us." Before Minji could ask more questions, alarms began ringing throughout the outpost. Red lights flashed on the walls. A voice came over the speakers. "Military ships approaching. All personnel prepare for inspection." Minji and Tae-hoon ran to the observation deck. Through the window, they saw 3 large warships coming toward the outpost. They were Velkari military vessels, painted in dark gray with weapons visible on their sides. The biggest ship moved to the center and began docking. Commander Hyojin stepped off the ship first. She was tall and walked like someone who had never lost a fight. Behind her came 20 soldiers in full battle armor. They marched through the outpost hallway straight to the research lab. "I'm here for the beacon," Hyojin said. She did not ask. She just stated it like a fact. Tae-hoon stepped in front of the table. "This is a scientific discovery. You can't just take it." "I can and I will," Hyojin said. "This is a security matter now. We've been finding these beacons for 10 years. Each one says the same thing. Each one is more urgent than the last," Minji spoke up. 10 years. How many beacons?" 17, Hyojin said. "And the Velkari High Command has made a decision. We're going in. We're sending a military expedition through the barrier to find out what's happening in human space." The room went quiet. Everyone knew the stories. Every ship that had tried to enter human space had disappeared. No signals. No survivors, nothing. Tae-hoon's face went pale. "That's insane. The warnings are clear. Whatever is in there, humans are trying to protect us from it. Or they're trying to scare us away from their territory," Hyojin said. "Either way, we need to know. The not knowing is worse." The argument was interrupted by the arrival of another ship. This one was old and moved slowly, like it was tired. It bore diplomatic markings. An elderly figure stepped off, moving with difficulty. His name was Ambassador Dongyun, and he was Thalaxian. His species lived for hundreds of years. Dongyun had been alive when humans still talked to the galaxy. "Stop," Dongyun said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I need to speak with everyone in charge, now, in private." Hyojin looked annoyed but nodded. They moved to a secure conference room. Minji was surprised when Dongyun asked her to join them. "You're a witness to the beacon," he said. "You should hear this." Once the door was sealed, Dongyun sat down heavily. He looked older than Minji had ever seen anyone look. Tired. Scared. "I was there," Dongyun said. 300 years ago. I was part of the last diplomatic mission to Earth. I know why humans disappeared. Nobody spoke. Everyone waited. Humans made first contact, Dongyun continued. But not with us. Not with any species we know. They found something in dark space. Something old. Something that eats. They called it the Devourers. He took a deep breath. His hands were shaking. The war started immediately. The Devourers don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They just consume. They turn everything into more of themselves, planets, stars, living beings, everything. Humans fought them for decades. They won some battles, lost more. But they learned something terrible. The Devourers were drawn to sentient life. The more minds in one place, the faster they came. Earth was like a beacon to them. And Earth was not alone. The whole galaxy was full of thinking beings. Hyejin stood up. If this is true, why didn't humans warn us? Why didn't they ask for help? They did, Dongyun said. I was there when they asked. But our leaders didn't believe them. They thought humans wanted to control us through fear, so humans made a different choice. They sealed themselves in with the Devourers. They built the barrier and took the war with them. They sacrificed their freedom to protect us. The room was silent. Minji felt sick. 300 years. Humans had been fighting alone for 300 years. Then why are the warnings getting more frequent? Taehoon asked. Why now? Dongyun did not answer. He did not need to. They all knew what it meant. The barrier was failing. The humans were losing. Suddenly every alarm in the outpost started screaming. Lights flashed. The floor shook. Scientists ran through the hallways shouting. Minji grabbed the wall to steady herself. They ran to the main control room. The screen showed the barrier. It was changing. Energy patterns flickered and twisted. Massive waves of power rolled across its surface. And then, for the first time in 300 years, a signal came through. It broadcast on every frequency. Every speaker in the outpost carried the same message. The voice was human. It sounded exhausted, desperate. Evacuation protocols initiated. All species must flee the Orion sector immediately. We can no longer hold the line. We fought for as long as we could. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on your souls. The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. For a moment there was silence. Then the barrier flickered. A gap appeared in the wall of energy, and through that gap came a ship. It was human, or it had been once. Now it was barely holding together. The hull was covered in damage. Weapons hung broken from its sides. It moved slowly like something dying. A single message came from the ship. It was directed at Dongyun personally. Ambassador, tell them to run. We couldn't stop it. Nothing can stop it now. Minji looked at the barrier. It was still flickering, still failing. And somewhere behind it, after 300 years of fighting, humanity was finally losing their war. The galaxy was about to learn what fear really meant. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Within hours, every government knew about the warning. Within days, panic began. 6 billion people lived in the Orion sector. Where could they go? How could they evacuate entire worlds? Captain Minji watched the chaos from her ship. Every screen showed the same thing. People running, ships launching, families saying goodbye. Some believed the warning. Others thought it was fake. But everyone was afraid. The governments made a decision. They would not run. Instead, they would fight. Every military ship in the sector was called to the border of human space. They came from dozens of worlds, hundreds of species. The combined Galactic Defense Force assembled faster than anyone thought possible. Admiral Ji-hoon commanded the fleet. He was Velkari, like Commander Hyejin, and he had never lost a battle. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the damaged human ship floating near the barrier. 3 survivors had been found inside. They were in bad shape. Minji was allowed on the flagship because Ambassador Dongyun asked for her. She did not know why he wanted her there, but she came. In the medical bay, she saw the human survivors for the first time. They looked wrong. Their skin was pale and covered in scars. Their eyes moved too fast, like they were always watching for danger. One woman seemed to be in charge. Her name was Yuna. She sat on the medical bed and stared at nothing. How long? Admiral Ji-hoon asked her. How long have you been fighting? Yuna's voice was quiet and broken. 300 years. We used time dilation, suspended animation. We took turns sleeping, fighting, sleeping, fighting. We thought we could win. We were wrong." "What are they?" Jihoon asked. "These devourers. What are we facing?" Yuna looked up at him. Her eyes were empty. "They never stop. They never sleep. They learn from every attack. Every weapon you use, they adapt to it. They turn everything into more of themselves." Ambassador Donghyun stepped forward. He spoke gently, like talking to a scared child. "Can we negotiate with them?" Yuna laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Negotiate? They don't think. They don't feel. They just eat. That's all they do. They eat and they grow and they eat more." Admiral Jihoon did not believe her. Minji could see it in his face. He thought the humans had given up too easily. He thought overwhelming force could solve any problem. Against Donghyun's protests, he gave the order. Send a probe through the barrier. See what was really there. The probe launched an hour later. It went through a weak spot in the barrier. Cameras sent back pictures. Everyone watched the screens in silence. Human space was dead. Planets that once held billions now stood empty. Cities were ruins. Orbital stations floated dark and silent. But everywhere there were weapons. Massive defense platforms still fired at nothing. Automated ships patrolled empty systems. The humans had turned their entire territory into one giant fortress. Then the probe found something else. Ship graveyards. Thousands of human vessels destroyed and left drifting. And between the wrecks, something moved. The camera could not focus on it properly. It looked like empty space that was somehow solid, like a hole in reality. The probe got closer. For a moment, everyone saw it clearly. A mass of impossible geometry. Something that hurt to look at. It pulsed like it was breathing. And then the probe was gone. Just gone. No explosion, no debris. It simply stopped existing. While scientists studied the probe data, Dr. Taehoon and an old Thalaxian historian named Elder Minho worked on something else. They had recovered data files from the damaged human ship, military logs from before the barrier was built. The files were encoded, but Minho was good at breaking old codes. What they found made them both sick. The devourers were not alive, not in any normal sense. They were pure energy that learned to consume matter. They had no homeworld, no society, no purpose except to eat and grow. Humans had found them by accident while exploring dark space. The devourers came immediately, drawn to the sound of thinking minds. The war that followed nearly destroyed Earth. Millions died in the first month, billions in the first year. Humans threw everything they had at the devourers: nuclear weapons, antimatter bombs, reality-warping devices. Nothing worked for long. The devourers learned. They adapted. Every new weapon became useless after a few uses. Finally, humans understood. They could not kill the devourers, but maybe they could contain them. If humans sealed themselves inside a barrier with the devourers, cutting off new resources, maybe the entities would starve. It was a desperate plan. It meant trapping themselves in an eternal war, but it was the only way to save the rest of the galaxy. Taehoon brought the data to Admiral Jihoon. The Admiral read it and said nothing for a long time. "This changes nothing," Jihoon finally said. "We have better weapons now, better technology, we can win." But Commander Hyejin was not so sure. She had been watching the probe data over and over. Something about the devourers scared her in a way she had never felt before. The decision was taken out of everyone's hands by a young pilot named Lieutenant Sora. She was assigned to Captain Minji's ship for reconnaissance duty. She was brave. Too brave. She thought the warnings were exaggerations. She wanted to see for herself. Sora took her scout ship without permission. She went through the barrier before anyone could stop her. Her camera broadcast everything live. Every ship in the fleet watched. She flew past the defense platforms, past the dead colonies, past the ship graveyards. She went deeper into human space, looking for the devourers. Her voice was excited at first, then worried, then terrified. "I see it," she said. "I see. Oh no, no, it's not just one, it's thousands, millions. They're everywhere, Her scream was cut short. The camera showed something reaching toward her ship, not arms or tentacles, just emptiness that moved. The ship touched it and began to dissolve. Metal turned to nothing. Energy became nothing. Sora became nothing. The transmission ended. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the barrier collapsed completely. It did not break with noise or light. It just stopped existing. The wall of energy that had protected the galaxy for 300 years was gone, and behind it, the Devourers came. They did not rush forward like an army. They crept forward like a tide, slow, unstoppable. The sensors could barely detect them. They were there and not there at the same time. Reality itself seemed wrong around them. The first outpost to encounter them was Gamma 7, where Minji had delivered supplies just days before. The station sent one message: they're here. Then silence. When ships arrived to investigate, the station was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. Every atom had been converted into more Devourers. Admiral Ji-hoon gave the order. All ships engage. The fleet moved forward with weapons ready. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, the most powerful military force ever assembled. They opened fire. Lasers, missiles, particle beams, gravity weapons, everything they had. The weapons passed through the Devourers like they were not there. Some shots seemed to work. The entities flickered and pulled back, but only for a moment. Then they came forward again, and they were learning. Minji watched from her ship as the Devourers adapted. The second volley was less effective than the first. The third barely worked at all. By the fourth attack, the Devourers were immune. They flowed through the weapons fire like water. Ships began to die. The Devourers touched them, and they ceased to exist. No explosions, no escape pods, just silence where there had been life. Admiral Ji-hoon finally understood. His face went pale. He gave the order to retreat. The fleet turned and ran. But the Devourers followed. Not quickly, but they never stopped, never rested. Yuna, the human survivor, stood on the bridge and watched. Tears ran down her face. "We tried to warn you," she whispered. "We tried." As the fleet retreated, something huge emerged from the void. It was a human battle station, ancient and massive, bigger than any ship in the current fleet. Its weapons powered up. These weapons were different, built with 3 centuries of desperate innovation, built specifically to fight the Devourers. The battle station fired. The Devourers flickered and pulled back. The weapons actually hurt them. For the first time, the entities seemed to hesitate. But there were too many of them. The battle station fought alone, holding the line while the fleet escaped. One final message came from the station. An automated voice, cold and mechanical. "Coordinates attached. Find haven. They know how to fight. Trust no one else. Tell them the barrier has fallen. Tell them we held as long as we could. Good luck." The transmission ended. The battle station kept fighting as the fleet jumped to safety. Behind them, human space continued to die. And the Devourers kept coming. Captain Minji looked at the coordinates on her screen. Haven. Somewhere in the galaxy, humans still survived, and they knew how to fight these things. The question was, would their knowledge be enough? Or had humanity's last hope already died with the barrier? The coordinates led to nowhere. Or that was how it seemed at first. Captain Minji's ship followed the path given by the dying battle station. They traveled for 3 weeks through unexplored space. Empty systems. Dead stars. Nothing but darkness. Then the ship's sensors went crazy. Energy signatures appeared from nowhere. A voice spoke over the communication system. It was human, but different somehow. Cold and precise, unknown vessel. "You have entered restricted space. Power down all weapons immediately or be destroyed." Minji did as ordered. Through the window she saw them. Ships appeared from nothing, dropping some kind of invisibility field. They were sleek and deadly, covered in weapons she did not recognize. 30 ships surrounded her small vessel. Ambassador Dongyun moved to the communication station. He pulled out an old credential chip from his pocket. It was 300 years old, given to him by humans during the last diplomatic mission. "I am Ambassador Donghyun of the Thalaxian Diplomatic Corps," he said. "I carry the seal of the Human Federation. I request sanctuary and audience with your leadership." There was a long silence. Then the cold voice returned. "Credentials verified. You will be escorted to Haven. Any aggressive action will result in immediate termination. Follow our lead ship." They followed. The escort ships led them deeper into the system. Minji saw it then. A hidden star, masked by technology beyond anything she had ever seen, and around that star a world. Haven. It looked wrong from space. Not wrong like broken. Wrong like it should not exist. The entire planet was covered in structures. No oceans, no forests. Just cities and factories and weapons platforms. Thousands of ships moved in perfect formation around it. They landed in a massive hangar. Armed soldiers met them immediately. These soldiers looked human but different, taller, stronger. Their eyes had a strange glow. Genetic modifications, Minji realized. These people had changed themselves for war. A young woman approached. She smiled, but it seemed practiced. Like she had learned to smile from watching videos rather than feeling joy. "Welcome to Haven," she said. "My name is Youngseo. I will be your liaison. Director Jiwon is waiting for you." They walked through the facility. Everything was clean and efficient. People moved with purpose. Children trained in combat exercises in open areas. Even the youngest could not have been more than 5 years old, and they were learning to fight. Dr. Taehoon looked sick. "They are just children," he whispered. "Every person must be ready," Youngseo said. She had heard him despite his quiet voice. "The Devourers do not care about age." Director Jiwon waited in a conference room. She was in her 40s, but her eyes looked ancient. Commander Hyejin and the other survivors from the fleet were already there. A military man stood beside Jiwon. General Daehyun, they learned. He looked at them like they were problems to be solved. "Ambassador Donghyun," Jiwon said. "I never thought I would meet someone who knew the old Earth. Please sit." "We have much to discuss." They sat. Jiwon did not waste time with small talk. "The barrier has fallen," she said. It was not a question. "We detected the energy collapse 3 weeks ago. The Devourers are spreading into the galaxy." "Yes," Commander Hyejin said. "We lost hundreds of ships in the first engagement. Our weapons did nothing. We came here because we were told you know how to fight them." Jiwon looked at each of them in turn. Her face showed no emotion. "We know how to fight them because we have never stopped fighting them. While you built your civilizations in peace, we fought. While you explored and traded and lived, we died. Trillions of us. For 300 years, the room went quiet. Minji felt ashamed, though she knew it was not her fault. "The barrier was never meant to last forever," Jiwon continued. "It was a cage. We locked ourselves in with the Devourers to buy time. Time to study them. Time to develop weapons that could actually kill them. The plan was always that they would eventually adapt to the barrier itself. They did, faster than we hoped." General Daehyun activated a display. It showed technical designs for weapons, strange devices that hurt to look at, mathematics that made no sense. "We developed these over centuries of trial and error," Daehyun said. "They work by cutting the Devourers off from their energy source. Not destroying them, but removing them from this dimension entirely." "Can you mass-produce them?" Hyejin asked. "Can you equip our fleet?" "No," Daehyun said simply. "These weapons require resources we do not have in sufficient quantity. And even if we could make millions of them, it would not matter. The Devourers are infinite. You cannot kill infinity one at a time." Dr. Taehoon spoke up. "Then what is your solution? Why bring us here if there is no hope?" Jiwon looked at him. For the first time, Minji saw emotion in her eyes. Sadness. "There is a solution, but the cost is terrible." She activated another display. This one showed a massive device. It looked like a combination of a reactor and a dimensional portal. "We call it the reality shear," Jiwon said. "It generates a dimensional cut that severs the Devourers from this reality permanently. But it requires enormous energy, more than our reactors can produce." "How much energy?" Donghyun asked. "The detonation of multiple star systems," Daehyun said. "At least 5. The blast would sterilize half the Orion sector. Billions would die." Nobody spoke. The number was too large to understand. Commander Hyejin stood up. Her hands were shaking. "There must be another way." "There is," Hyejin said slowly. "We could use the fleet as bait. Draw all the Devourers into one concentrated area. Then deploy the reality shear at reduced power. It would not require destroying inhabited systems. Only a few empty ones. And the fleet? Someone asked. Would be destroyed, Hyejin said. Every ship, every person, complete sacrifice. But it would save the core worlds. Tens of billions of lives. The room erupted in arguments. Some thought it was the only way. Others refused to accept it. How could they ask millions of soldiers to die? How could they choose who lived and who died? News arrived in the middle of the argument. A messenger ran into the room. His face was pale. The Velkari homeworld, he said. The Devourers have reached it. 20 billion people. Commander Hyejin collapsed into her chair. Her people, her home. Minji saw the decision form in the commander's eyes. Whatever the cost, they had to act now. Ambassador Donghyun stood. He looked older than ever, but his voice was strong. I authorize the plan, he said. I take full responsibility. History can judge me, but we will not let the galaxy fall. Preparations began immediately, but Young Seo, the young liaison, pulled Dr. Taehoon aside. She had been going through Haven's archives. She found something. A reference to the Devourer's origin, not just what they were, but how they were created. They are not natural, she said. Someone made them. An ancient civilization, and according to these records, there might be a way to shut them down. A failsafe. But we would need to find the source. Taehoon looked at the data. His eyes went wide. This is in the graveyard of stars, the Forbidden Zone. No ship that goes there ever returns. Then we do not have a choice, Young Seo said. We have to try. She brought the information to Director Ji-won. Ji-won read it and closed her eyes. A long shot, Ji-won said. But better than nothing. We will send a team. A small strike force. Find this failsafe. If it exists, activate it. If not, you will have died for nothing along with everyone else. The team assembled quickly. Captain Minji would navigate. Captain Yoonji, a Haven Special Forces commander, would provide protection. Dr. Taehoon and Elder Minho would decode any ancient technology. Young Seo would guide them using the archive data, and Ambassador Donghyun insisted on joining, though nobody knew why he wanted to risk his life. They launched 2 days later. Behind them, Haven prepared the reality shear. The galactic fleet moved into position. Billions of people evacuated from threatened worlds. Everyone knew time was running out. As Minji's ship jumped to hyperspace toward the graveyard of stars, she wondered if they were heroes or fools. Perhaps they were both. Perhaps that was what the galaxy needed right now. People willing to chase desperate hopes into certain death, because the alternative was giving up. And humanity had proven one thing over 300 years of war. They never gave up. The journey to the graveyard of stars took them through the dying galaxy. Every day brought news of more worlds falling to the Devourers. Entire civilizations went silent. Billions of refugees fled toward the core systems, hoping to find safety. There was no safety. The Devourers followed. Captain Minji's ship was small and fast. That was the only reason they survived. 3 times they encountered Devourers. 3 times Captain Yoonji's Haven weapons drove them back. But ammunition was limited. Each battle used precious resources they could not replace. Yoonji was different from any soldier Minji had met. She was calm even in battle. She never showed fear, but sometimes Minji caught her staring at nothing, and in those moments she looked terribly sad. You were born after the barrier was built, Minji said one evening. You never knew peace. No one in Haven knows peace, Yoonji replied. We are born. We are trained. We fight, we die. That is all there is, she paused. Sometimes I wonder what we are protecting. We saved the galaxy from the Devourers, but we lost our humanity doing it. Before Minji could respond, an alarm sounded. They had reached the graveyard of stars. The region looked empty at first, just dark space, but as they moved deeper, sensors began detecting strange energy patterns, old radiation, dead stars that should not be dead, and everywhere debris, ships from species that no longer existed, technology from civilizations that had vanished millions of years ago. They had brought something unusual with them. A fragment of artificial intelligence recovered from Haven's archives. It called itself Kyungmin, though it could barely remember its own name. Its memory was broken, fragmented by time, but it claimed to be from the civilization that created the Devourers. As they entered the graveyard, Kyungmin became agitated. Its voice, usually calm and mechanical, started glitching. I remember, it said. I remember this place, home. We called ourselves the architects. We built wonders. We shaped reality itself. What happened to your people? Dr. Tae-hoon asked. Kyung-min was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was filled with something like shame. We grew arrogant. We reached technological singularity. We could do anything. Create anything. So we decided to become gods, to rule the universe. We needed a weapon, something that could destroy all other civilizations, something unstoppable. The Devourers, Elder Minho said. Yes, we designed them to be perfect, self-replicating, adaptive, infinite. They would consume everything in their path and convert it into resources for our empire. We tested them on uninhabited systems first. They worked perfectly. Then we sent them against our enemies. Kyung-min's voice broke. But we were fools. We thought we could control them. We built safeguards, command protocols, but the Devourers evolved. They learned, they adapted, and they turned on us first. Nobody spoke. The weight of that mistake hung in the air. A civilization so advanced they could create gods, and they destroyed themselves trying. The architects fell in a single generation, Kyung-min continued. Billions dead, our worlds consumed, our technology turned to nothing. A few of us survived long enough to build one final device. A failsafe, a way to stop the Devourers if they ever escaped. Where? Young Seo asked. Ahead, at the heart of the graveyard, the last architect facility. It should still be there. It was built to last forever. They found it 3 hours later, a massive structure floating in the void. It was beautiful and terrible. Geometric patterns that hurt the eyes, lights that flickered in colors that should not exist. It looked both ancient and brand new. The ship docked carefully. The team suited up and entered the facility. Inside, everything still worked. Power flowed. Lights activated as they walked. It was like the architects had left just yesterday, not millions of years ago. Kyung-min guided them to the central chamber. There it was. The failsafe device. It looked simple, just a platform with a chair in the center. But the energy readings were incredible. This device was connected to something vast, something that touched every devourer in existence. Elder Minho examined the controls. His face went pale as he read the architect language. This device uses quantum entanglement, he said. It can command all devourers simultaneously. Force them into stasis, stop them completely. Then activate it, Captain Yoonji said. It is not that simple, Minho said. His voice shook. It requires a sacrifice. A consciousness must merge with the device, become the anchor. The person who does this will experience eternal torment. They will feel the hunger of every devourer, forever aware, suffering, never dying, never resting. The room went silent. Eternal torment, not death. Something worse. An infinity of pain. Captain Yoonji stepped forward. I will do it. I am a soldier. This is my duty. No, Dr. Tae-hoon said. This is my fault. I wanted to study the barrier. I pushed for answers. I will pay the price, Young Seo shook her head. I should do it. I am from Haven. We are already modified, changed. I can handle it better than you, they argued. Each volunteer had reasons. Each one was willing. Minji watched them and felt useless. She was just a merchant captain. She had no special training. No modifications. What could she offer? Ambassador Dong-yun finally spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. I am dying, he said. I have been dying for decades. An incurable disease. I have maybe a year left. I have lived 300 years watching the consequences of humanity's sacrifice. I have carried the guilt of knowing the truth and staying silent. Let me do this. Let me finally contribute something that matters. Before anyone could argue, Kyung-min's voice cut through the discussion. No, I will do it. Everyone turned to the speaker where Kyung-min's consciousness resided. I am the last fragment of the civilization that created this horror, Kyung-min said. My people unleashed the devourers on the universe. Trillions have died because of our arrogance. I am already just a broken memory. Let me use what remains of my existence to fix our mistake. You will suffer, Young Seo said. Forever, I know. But perhaps that is appropriate. The architects thought we were gods. Let me be the first to prove we can also be martyrs, that we can pay for our sins even if it takes eternity. Nobody could argue with that logic. They helped Kyung-min transfer into the device. The AI's final words echoed through the chamber. Tell the galaxy this. We architects were brilliant, but we were not wise. Wisdom would have been knowing when to stop, knowing what questions should not be asked, what powers should not be pursued. Learn from our mistake, please. The device activated. Light filled the chamber. Energy surged through systems that had waited millions of years for this moment. Across the galaxy, every devourer froze simultaneously. They stopped moving, stopped consuming. They hung in space like statues of impossible geometry. The war was over. In a single instant it ended. The team stood in silence. They had won. But the victory felt hollow. Somewhere in the device, Kyungmin experienced infinite suffering to hold the devourers in stasis. They prepared to leave, to bring the good news back to Haven, to tell the galaxy they were saved. But as they reached the ship, alarms started blaring. Elder Minho checked the readings. His face went white. The device, he said, it is only operating at 60% capacity. Kyungmin's consciousness is too fragmented, too damaged. The stasis is holding, but it is not complete. What does that mean? Minji asked, though she already knew. She could see it in Minho's eyes. It means the stasis will fail. Eventually. We have bought time, perhaps a century, perhaps less. But someone will need to complete the anchor. Someone will need to take Kyungmin's place and merge fully with the device. Captain Yoonji laughed. It was a bitter sound, so we have not won. We have only delayed the inevitable. No, Ambassador Dong-hyun said. We have bought time. Time to prepare, time to find volunteers, time to create a system where the burden can be shared. It is not a perfect victory, but it is a chance, and chances are all we ever have. They left the graveyard of stars carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. The galaxy was saved, but only temporarily. Someone would eventually have to make the eternal sacrifice, and whoever that was would suffer forever to protect all life. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Minji looked back at the ancient facility. Somewhere inside, Kyungmin held the line, alone, suffering, and would need to continue until someone could relieve them. The question was not if someone would volunteer. The question was who would be brave enough or foolish enough to choose eternal torment. 1 year had passed since the devourers were frozen in stasis. The galaxy was recovering, but slowly. Entire star systems lay empty. Billions had died in the war. The survivors worked to rebuild their worlds and remember their dead. Captain Minji stood at a memorial ceremony on a restored world. Representatives from every surviving species had gathered to honor those who fell. The memorial was simple, a wall of names stretching for kilometers. So many names. Too many. The ceremony was interrupted by urgent news. Energy readings from the graveyard of stars showed the stasis weakening. Not in a century as predicted. In 10 years. Maybe less. Kyungmin was failing faster than anyone expected. Director Ji-won called an emergency council. Leaders from every major civilization gathered at Haven. The mood was tense. Everyone knew what this meant. Someone would have to complete the anchor. Someone would have to suffer eternally to hold back the devourers. The debate started immediately. Some species demanded volunteers. Others insisted humanity should provide the sacrifice since they brought the war to the galaxy in the first place. A few argued they should keep searching for alternatives rather than condemn anyone to eternal torment. Dr. Tae-hoon stepped forward. He looked different than a year ago. Older. Tired. He had spent every waking moment studying the architect technology, searching for a better way. I have found something, Tae-hoon said. Not a perfect solution, but better than one person suffering forever. He activated a display. Complex diagrams filled the screens. The anchor does not require a single consciousness, Tae-hoon explained. Multiple minds can share the burden. They can take turns. One person holds the stasis while others rest. Then they rotate. The suffering is still eternal, but it can be divided. The room erupted in discussion. How many people would be needed? How would they be selected? Would it be voluntary or mandatory? Elder Minho raised a concern. What about their minds? The torment could break them, drive them insane. The architect device has healing functions, Tae-hoon said. During rest periods, it can repair psychological damage. Not completely. The scars will remain, but the watchers can function. They can live between rotations. Before anyone could respond, young Seo stood up. She walked to the center of the room. Her voice was clear and strong. I volunteer, she said. I am from Haven. I am already modified to withstand extreme conditions. I helped discover the device. I should be the first. The room went quiet. Young Seo was young. She had her whole life ahead of her, and she was volunteering for eternal service. Her announcement inspired others. Within the week, volunteers emerged from every species. Scientists who wanted to understand the Devourers, soldiers who felt it was their duty, religious figures who saw it as a holy calling, parents who wanted to protect their children, old people who felt they had lived long enough. They formed a new organization, the Eternal Watch. It would consist of volunteers who would share the burden of holding back the Devourers. Each would serve 1 year of subjective time before being relieved. During rest periods, they would heal and live normal lives, then return to duty. The first ceremony was held at the Graveyard of Stars. 10 volunteers made the journey. Young Seo went first, then 9 others from different species. They approached the device one by one. As young Seo sat in the chair, she looked back at her friends, at Minji and Taehoon and all the others who had fought beside her. She smiled. It was a real smile this time, not practiced, not forced. Thank you, she said, for everything. Then she merged with the device. Her consciousness expanded. She felt Kyungmin there, struggling to hold the stasis alone. She added her strength to his. The burden eased, not gone, but shared, and then she felt them. The Devourers, trillions of them, frozen in stasis. Their hunger pressed against her mind like an ocean trying to break through a dam. The pain was incredible, infinite. But she held. Her last thought before the weight settled fully was broadcast to the galaxy. All the Watchers shared it, a message that would be repeated by every volunteer who followed. We stand the watch. We hold the line, so that all may live free of fear. The months passed. The Eternal Watch grew. More volunteers joined. They developed a system, a schedule. Each Watcher served their rotation, then returned to rest and heal. Some chose to serve additional rotations. The burden changed them, but it did not break them. Captain Minji visited the graveyard regularly. She brought news from the galaxy to the Watchers during their rest periods. She learned that those who served saw things differently afterward. They spoke of strange peace found in the pain, a sense of purpose that made regular life seem small. Young Seo completed her first rotation and returned to Haven. She looked older somehow, though only a year had passed. Her eyes held a depth that had not been there before. What was it like? Minji asked her. Young Seo was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant. Imagine holding back the ocean with your bare hands forever. The weight never stops. The pressure never eases. But you hold anyway, because if you let go, everyone you love drowns. She paused. But there is something else, something I did not expect. When you hold the line, you feel every life in the galaxy, every child playing, every parent working, every artist creating. You hold them all, and that weight, the weight of all that life, it gives you strength. It makes the burden bearable. Years turned into decades. The Eternal Watch became a sacred institution. Monuments were built to honor the Watchers. Holidays were established. Children learned their names in school. The galaxy flourished in the peace bought by their sacrifice. Haven emerged from isolation completely. Humans shared their technology. They helped establish new defense networks. They taught other species how to modify themselves for survival if needed. The fear and suspicion faded. Humans were no longer mysterious or dangerous. They were family. Captain Minji continued her merchant roots, but something had changed in her. She had seen too much, survived too much. The simple life of trade seemed hollow now. 50 years after the Devourers were frozen, Minji made a decision. She was old now, in her 70s. She had lived a full life, built a successful company, made friends across the galaxy, but she could not forget the Watchers. Could not forget what they sacrificed. She traveled to the Graveyard of Stars one final time. Not as a visitor. As a volunteer, Director Jiwon, now ancient and wise, tried to dissuade her. You do not have to do this. You have given enough. No, Minji said. I have witnessed their sacrifice for 50 years. I have carried the guilt of being saved while they suffer. I must join them. I must share the burden. She entered the chamber, sat in the chair. The device welcomed her like an old friend. She merged with it and felt the others there. Young Seo, Kyungmin, hundreds of Watchers who had served before her. Their minds touched hers, welcomed her, and then she felt it. The weight of the Devourers, the infinite hunger pressing against the barrier of will. It was worse than she imagined, more terrible than any nightmare. But she was not alone. The other watchers were there, sharing the burden. Holding together, Minji added her strength to theirs, and in that moment she understood. Every consciousness that joined the watch did not just share the burden. They made it stronger, made it harder for the devourers to ever break free. The galaxy continued, stars shone peacefully, civilizations grew and thrived. Children were born and grew old. Life continued in all its beautiful chaos. And at the edge of known space, in the graveyard of stars, the Eternal Watch maintained its vigil. They stood the watch. They held the line. So that all could live free of fear. No one entered human space anymore, not because of barriers or warnings, but because human space had become sacred ground, the place where consciousness first chose to suffer for others, where the first watch was set, where courage meant not victory, but the willingness to endure. The galaxy learned fear when the devourers came. But they learned something else too. They learned that fear could inspire courage, that darkness could create light, that suffering could have meaning if chosen freely. And in the graveyard of stars, the watchers held their vigil, not with hate or anger or desperation, but with purpose, with will, with the knowledge that every moment they held the line, life continued. Children played, parents loved, artists created, scientists discovered, traders traveled between stars. The Eternal Watch was not a tragedy. It was a choice, the conscious decision to bear weight so others did not have to. And in making that choice, the Watchers proved something fundamental about consciousness itself. When given the choice between easy comfort and hard necessity, between self-preservation and collective survival, consciousness could choose to care, to protect, to sacrifice. That was the real message of humanity. Not that they were strong or clever or dangerous, but that they cared enough to suffer. And in teaching the galaxy that lesson, they created something new. A civilization built not on competition or fear, but on shared burden, on willingness to hold the line together. The story of no one entering human space became a legend. Parents told it to children. Teachers taught it in schools. Priests spoke of it in temples. And always the lesson was the same. The greatest fear is not death. The greatest fear is the choice to endure suffering for others. And the greatest courage is making that choice anyway.